Have you ever felt a presence watching you when you're completely alone? That inexplicable moment when the hair on the back of your neck stands up and you know something isn't quite right? What if I told you that sometimes these feelings, these instincts, are trying to warn us about something we can't yet see? In 2013, in the heart of Los Angeles, a security camera captured something so inexplicable, so deeply disturbing, that it would leave millions of viewers questioning everything they thought they knew about reality. A young woman named Elisa Lam stepped into an elevator at the infamous Cecil Hotel. But what happened in the next 4 minutes would become one of the most chilling mysteries of our time. Some say it was a tragic accident. Others point to something more sinister. And then there are those who believe something supernatural was at play. Welcome back to Humanity Tales, where we don't just share stories, we uncover the human truths that lie beneath the surface of every mystery. Before we dive deeper into this haunting tale, I want you to ask yourself, do you believe that sometimes reality can be more terrifying than any horror movie? Because what you're about to discover might challenge everything you think you know. This isn't just another true crime story. This is about Elisa, a bright, creative 21-year-old student with dreams, fears, and a blog where she shared her thoughts with the world. A young woman who, like many of us, was trying to find her place in the world, who decided to embark on a solo adventure down the West Coast, not knowing it would be her last. In the next few minutes, we'll walk through the dark halls of the Cecil Hotel's history. We'll examine evidence that others have overlooked. We'll hear from witnesses who've never spoken publicly before. And most importantly, we'll try to understand how a routine hotel stay turned into one of the most baffling mysteries of the first century. But before we continue, I need to warn you. This story isn't for the faint of heart. What you're about to hear has left detectives, forensic experts, and countless internet sleuths questioning their beliefs about what's possible and what's not. If you're new to Humanity Tales, this is the perfect moment to join our community. Hit that subscribe button and notification bell, because trust me, you won't want to miss what we uncover in our investigations. So dim the lights, settle in, and prepare yourself, because this is the true story of Elisa Lam, a mystery that begins with a simple elevator ride and ends with questions that still haunt us to this day. And perhaps, just perhaps, together we might finally understand what really happened on that cold February night in downtown Los Angeles. To understand the story of Elisa Lam, we first need to step into a place that many call the Death Hotel, a building whose walls have witnessed so many tragedies that some say they're forever stained with darkness. The Cecil Hotel opened its doors in 1927 during the Roaring Twenties. Its marble lobby, stained glass windows, and palm trees promised luxury to Los Angeles' growing elite. But what began as a dream would soon transform into a nightmare. You see, just 2 years after its grand opening, the stock market crashed. The Great Depression hit, and the Cecil's neighborhood, now known as Skid Row, began its descent into darkness. What happened next would earn the Cecil a place among America's most notorious buildings. In the 1930s, the first documented suicide took place within its walls. A guest was found in their room, having ingested poison. But this was just the beginning. Over the next decades, the Cecil would witness no fewer than 16 deaths, suicides, murders, and accidents that defied explanation. But perhaps most chilling of all, the Cecil Hotel became a temporary home to some of America's most infamous killers. Richard Ramirez, known as the Night Stalker, lived on the Cecil's 14th floor during his killing spree in 1985. He would return to the hotel, clothes stained with blood, and dispose of his evidence in the hotel's dumpster. Austrian serial killer Jack Unterweger also chose the Cecil as his base in 1991, while supposedly writing articles about crime in Los Angeles. We would later learn he was actually conducting his own killing spree during this time. The hotel's reputation grew so dark that some began calling it the suicide. Local residents spoke of strange noises in the night, unexplained shadows, and an overwhelming sense of dread that seemed to seep from its very walls. But here's what makes this history truly relevant to our story. When Elisa Lam checked into the Cecil in 2013, she wasn't aware of any of this. She had booked her stay at what was then called the Stay on Main, a budget-friendly hostel operation running within the Cecil building. The hotel had tried to rebrand itself to escape its dark past, but some say you can't simply erase 8 decades of tragedy. That somehow the building itself remembers. And as Elisa would ride the elevator up to her room on that January evening, she had no idea she was about to become part of the Cecil's long and tragic history. But before we witness what happened in that elevator, we need to understand who Elisa Lam really was, a young woman whose final days would become one of the internet's most enduring mysteries. Elisa Lam was more than just a mysterious figure in a viral video. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend. And through her blog, we can still hear her voice today. In one of her last posts, she wrote, "I have arrived in LA. I am so excited to explore this city. There's something about traveling alone that makes you feel both incredibly free and remarkably small, too." Born in Vancouver to Hong Kong immigrant parents, Elisa was a 21-year-old student at the University of British Columbia. Those who knew her described her as bright, creative, and deeply introspective. But like many young adults, Elisa was also battling her own demons. She had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and depression, conditions she wrote about openly and honestly on her blog. She wrote, "Some days are harder than others, but I refuse to let my struggles define me. There's so much world out there to see." What many don't know is that Elisa was on a carefully planned medication regimen. She needed to take her prescriptions daily to maintain balance, a detail that would later become crucially important to this case. Her trip down the West Coast was meant to be an adventure of a lifetime, starting in San Diego, moving through Los Angeles, and eventually reaching Santa Cruz. She called it her West Coast tour, a chance to prove to herself and others that she could navigate the world on her own. But something changed when she reached Los Angeles. Her daily calls to her parents suddenly stopped. Her usually active social media went quiet. On January 26, 2013, Elisa checked into the Stay on Main. Remember, this was the Cecil Hotel's new identity. She was originally placed in a shared room, but other guests reported odd behavior, leading to her being moved to a private room. The staff later recalled that she seemed different, not quite the same person who had checked in. Some said she appeared to be having conversations with someone who wasn't there. And then came January 31st, the day Elisa Lam was last seen alive. What happened next would be captured by a security camera in an elevator, footage that would soon become one of the most analysed and debated videos in internet history. But before we examine that infamous footage, let me warn you, What you're about to see has left experts baffled and viewers deeply disturbed for years. Some say it shows a young woman in the grips of a mental health crisis. Others insist there's something far more sinister at play. And a few believe, Bethai, we're witnessing something that defies rational explanation altogether. What I'm about to show you is the last known footage of Elisa Lam alive. A 4-minute video that has launched countless theories and keeps viewers awake at night. The timestamp reads 2:00 a.m., February 1st, 2013. The security camera is positioned inside the Cecil Hotel's elevator, recording in black and white. Watch carefully as Elisa enters the elevator. At first, her behaviour seems normal. She presses multiple buttons, presumably to reach her floor. But then, something strange begins to happen. The elevator doors, they don't close. No matter how many buttons Elisa presses, they remain stubbornly open. And this is where things take a disturbing turn. Elisa begins to peer out of the elevator, first to the left, then to the right. Her movements become increasingly erratic. She steps out, then back in. Her hands start moving in strange patterns. Some say it looks like she's communicating in sign language. Others believe she's playing some sort of game. But here's something most people miss. Throughout the entire video, the elevator doors never once attempt to close normally. In a working elevator, they should close automatically after a few seconds. Then we see her do something truly bizarre. She begins to move her arms and hands in ways that don't seem natural. Almost as if she's interacting with someone or something that we can't see. Some viewers claim they can see distortions in the footage, shadows moving where they shouldn't be. But is this just our minds trying to make sense of the senseless? The final moments of the footage are perhaps the most chilling. Elisa steps out of the elevator one last time, makes several jerky, unnatural movements, and then simply disappears from view. Only after she's gone do the elevator doors finally close. They shut smoothly, as if they had never malfunctioned at all. But here's where the mystery deepens even further. Hotel staff would later report that all elevator systems were checked that day, and no mechanical issues were found. And perhaps most disturbing of all, the security footage released to the public appears to have been slowed down. But why? And by whom? This would be the last time anyone would see Elisa Lam alive. But what happened next would turn this already bizarre case into something that would haunt investigators for years to come. For 18 days after that elevator footage, Elisa Lam seemed to vanish into thin air. Her parents, worried sick, contacted the police. Missing person posters appeared across Los Angeles. But on February 19th, something strange began happening at the Cecil Hotel. Guests started complaining about the water. They said the water pressure was unusually low. That the water coming from their taps was dark, had a peculiar taste, and an odd smell. One guest, Sabina Bohr, later told investigators, the water had a very funny, sweet, disgusting taste. It felt thick. But the most disturbing part? The hotel guests had been using this water for days. Drinking it, brushing their teeth with it, showering in it. On that February morning, maintenance worker Santiago Lopez climbed to the roof to check the water tanks. He noticed something unusual. One of the tank's maintenance hatches was open. When he looked inside, he found Elisa Lam's body floating face up in the dark water. But this is where the case becomes even more baffling. The water tanks were secured behind locked doors and had alarms that should have triggered if anyone accessed them. How did Elisa get to the roof? How did she get into the tank? And most puzzling of all, how did the hatch close behind her? The autopsy would later rule her death as accidental drowning. They found no drugs in her system other than her prescribed medications, and troublingly, these were at subtherapeutic levels, suggesting she hadn't been taking them regularly. But this explanation left countless questions unanswered. The tanks were 8 feet tall, the water was cold, the space was dark. How could anyone accidentally drown themselves in such a location? And then there were the coincidences. The tuberculosis test used in a nearby outbreak was called Lam Elisa. The Cecil Hotel's dark history. The elevator's strange malfunction. Some say these are merely coincidences. Others see patterns that suggest something far more sinister. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of this case is what it tells us about ourselves. About how desperately we seek meaning in tragedy. About how sometimes the simplest explanation might be the hardest to accept. In the years since Elisa's death, countless theories have emerged. Some rational, some supernatural, and some that challenge everything we think we know about reality. When a mystery this deep touches the public consciousness, theories inevitably emerge. Some try to explain the inexplicable. Others perhaps reveal more about our own fears than the truth. The first theory, and the official explanation, points to mental health. Elisa's bipolar disorder, combined with her inconsistent medication levels, could have triggered a psychotic episode. Her blog posts in the days before her death showed increasing signs of disorganized thinking. The strange movements in the elevator could have been symptoms of her condition. But then there's the second theory, foul play. Supporters point to the impossibility of accessing the water tank alone, the missing surveillance footage, and the hotel's troubled history. Some investigators have suggested that the elevator video was edited, that crucial moments were removed. But if so, by whom and why? The third theory ventures into darker territory. Those who know the Cecil Hotel's history suggest something supernatural. They point to the building's countless deaths, its dark energy, and the strange coincidences surrounding the case. But perhaps the most compelling aspect of this case isn't the theories themselves, but what they tell us about human nature. In our search for answers, we sometimes forget that at the heart of this mystery was a real young woman. A daughter, a sister, a soul trying to find her place in the world. Elisa's sister would later write, "She wasn't just a viral video or a mystery to be solved, she was our Elisa. She loved books, wrote beautiful poetry, and dreamed of seeing the world." The case would lead to changes in hotel security protocols worldwide. It sparked important conversations about mental health support for young travelers. And it reminded us that sometimes the line between the explicable and inexplicable is thinner than we think. Today, the Cecil Hotel stands as a reminder of this haunting mystery. Though recently renovated and rebranded, many say the building will forever be linked to Elisa Lam's story. Perhaps some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. Perhaps their purpose is to remind us of our own vulnerability and humanity. If this story has touched you, please take a moment to like this video and share it with others. Subscribe to Humanity Tales for more deep dives into mysteries that challenge our understanding of reality. And the next time you find yourself alone in an elevator, remember Elisa Lam and the mystery that continues to haunt us all. Some say truth is stranger than fiction. In the case of Elisa Lam, it might just be both.